In 1920, there was a man from Bavaria in Germany who decided to place an advertisement in his local newspaper around the time of Valentine's Day, which we celebrate tomorrow, St. Valentine's Day. The advertisement in 1920 read like this, with a translation into English for us all. Middle-ranking civil servant, single, Catholic, 43, immaculate past and from the country. Is looking for a good Catholic, pure girl who can cook well, tackle all the household chores, with a talent for sewing and homemaking, with a view to marriage as soon as possible. Fortune is desirable, but not a precondition. A woman named Maria Feitner answered this advertisement. She was 36 years old. She was a trained cook and the illegitimate daughter of a baker. She did not have a fortune, but even so, the couple ended up marrying 4 months later. Despite their somewhat advanced years, they had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Their youngest child, who was a boy, received the same name as the father, Joseph. This boy, who was the youngest of this couple, is better known today as Emeritus Pope Benedict XVI. I tell their story because this week many in our world will celebrate Valentine's Day. The patron of loving relationships is what St. Valentine is. It's not just an opportunity for the flower shops to make lots of money by selling expensive roses. It's actually a reminder that we're called to enter into loving relationships. Joseph Ratzinger Sr. and Maria Feitner give a beautiful testimony to married love. Their love illustrates what we hear in today's first reading. A blessing on a man who puts his trust in the Lord, with the Lord for his hope. If a person gets into their mid-30s and they have not found that special person, they sometimes begin to feel that life and that love might have passed them by. Maybe even that God has forgotten them. You might know people who've experienced this. Perhaps some of you might have even experienced this yourself. Love being passed by was not the case eventually for Joseph and Maria Ratzinger. They were a couple who put their faith deeply in God and in the path of God. And they entered into that love and they were open to that love, even in such a quirky way to put an advertisement in the newspaper. Perhaps these days people use dating apps in the same way perhaps they did in 1920. Because of their trust in God, they had a beautiful Christian marriage and they were deeply united as a family. They produced 2 sons that went on to become priests. One went on to be elected as Pope. Today's reading tells us that real happiness lies not in the things of this world, but in what we know as the Beatitudes, the way of happiness. Happiness is not just the way of the world. Jesus reminds us that happiness is being able to laugh even in the midst of great suffering. If we choose God as our hope, our security, our meaning, and our happiness, then we will be blessed. We will be truly and eternally happy. And this is what God wants for us. This is what God wants for us within our relationships. Marriage should bring about happiness. And happiness should lead to the Beatitudes, which is to the way of the blessed, the way of the saints. When a couple get married, they choose not just to be happy together for the next day or the next few months. They choose a path of sanctity, the path of the Beatitudes, the path to help each other to become saints and to be truly happy in the good times, but also happy especially in the hard times. Sometimes people say it's a little bit corny, I think, but they say sometimes that there are 3 rings involved in marriage. You have the ring, that's the 2 rings that are shared and offered to each other, to the bride and the groom during the wedding ceremony. But the 3rd ring is suffering. It's a little bit corny, but it's a reminder that marriage is not just about what we get for ourselves. It's about a life of service during those happy times, but especially during those difficult times. In today's gospel, Jesus instructs his disciples in the blessedness of poverty, of hunger, of sorrow and persecution. These ways contradict what human natural expectations are of happiness. Most people, if they're in poverty, would say, well, I'm not happy. If we're hungry, well, I'm not happy. If I'm sorrowing, well, I'm not happy. And if I'm being persecuted, I'm definitely not happy. But Jesus says that's the way of being a saint. If our life just becomes about clinging to life and not about a life of service and love where goodness oozes out of us, even or especially during those hard times, then perhaps we've missed the point of the life of the saint and the life of the Beatitudes. The challenge of the Beatitudes for all of us is that are we going to be happy in the world's ways? Or are we going to say we're going to choose the way of Christ? We're going to choose to sometimes be the one who might go hungry. I remember growing up in my own family, I was one of 6 kids, and occasionally you'd have other visitors who'd drop in around the dinner time, around the dinner time. My mum was always very good at being able to make a meal that was designed for 4 people suddenly go 6 ways or 8 ways or 10 ways. And I remember at times noticing that my mother's plate got smaller at times. Perhaps she didn't need to eat as much because she didn't have the size perhaps of myself or my other brothers. But I think she at times went a little bit hungry so that she can provide for others. And that's a true act of love. That's where I think this beatitude of where we go hungry, but it brings joy. We're willing to give up a little bit of ourselves to be able to be of service to others. Today, after the Lord's Prayer, I'll invite John and Christina to come forward for a special blessing. When a couple is married in the context of a Mass, the nuptial blessing happens directly after the Lord's Prayer in the Mass. You might have remembered it if you've been to a nuptial Mass. You might have even had the blessing of the marriage for yourself at that time. And then directly after that blessing is the kiss of peace, a sign of peace that's shared between the couple and then all of us. And so we will do that today as a special blessing on the 60th wedding anniversary for John and Christina Sakowitz. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day, as I've been talking about. Say to your loved ones, remind them that you love them. That it's not just about a mushy feeling inside. It's not just about a beautiful flower or someone who can be romantic. The true way of love is the way of the Beatitudes, where we're willing to be poor in service for others, where we're willing to go hungry in service for others, where we're willing to even accept pain, rejection and persecution in love for others. That's the challenge of love. That's the challenge of Beatitudes. Many of us and many of you do this in the context of your marriages and your life. Thank you especially to John and Christina for doing this in the context of their marriage for the last 60 years and for however many years you have into the future. You may not get 60 more, but you might get another 10 or 15, we'll see, maybe even 20. So congratulations to you today and blessings to you.